What's going on YouTube? This is Sorare Teacher again. Now, as you probably know, and I'm super excited, the MLS is finally back. We have finally made it through the off season, which means we get to use our MLS cards finally after several months of them just sitting dormant in our galleries. So what I want to do in today's video is really just talk about my predictions for the first game week, look at matchups between teams, and also take a look at my personal teams going into Champions America for the upcoming MLS 2022 season that starts this Saturday. So let's go ahead and take a look at my team that I have here going here. So as you guys probably know, if you've been following this channel, I'm a relatively, low tier budget user. I don't have a lot of cards. I don't have a tremendous gallery. I'm not a whale by any stretch of the imagination, but I have put about $6,000 or so into what I consider to be a pretty high quality lineup. And in my opinion, if I can't win a card with $6,000 into my lineup, covering all my bases, then I definitely don't deserve to win cards at all this season. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I've got going on for this first game week here. So as you can see, I only have two lineups that I'm running in this game week. My general AllStar lineup to do some ETH grinding that I'm going to be using some MLS players inside of, as well as my America lineup that I've kind of tailored not based on who my best players are, but based on the matchups that I see occurring within the first game week. Because as you guys probably know, matchups matter. Maybe more than anything else, matchups matter. So you can see here, I have Tyler Miller as my starting goalkeeper. If you've been paying attention at all to the MLS over the last couple of seasons, then you probably know that Tyler Miller is one of the best shot stoppers really in the entire MLS. Last season, he had one of the highest save percentages of all goalkeepers in the MLS at over 76%. He had double-digit clean sheets. I believe he's had double-digit clean sheets for 2 of the last 3 seasons as a starter. I know when he was with LA, he had, I think, back-to-back clean sheet seasons as well. So he's got a pretty good track record of being a clean sheet guy. Minnesota is no different. He's been doing clean sheets there, over and over again, just like he did with LA. So I kind of have him in my starting spot pretty much every week. I'm not super high on having a lot of goalkeepers. I think goalkeepers have a ton of variance, and so I'm not really planning to change them out much. I think once in a while I might use JT Marcinkowski from San Jose because I have his common, who I might use once in a while if I think they have a favorable matchup. But for the most part, I'm entrusting Tyler Miller with my starting goalkeeper spot pretty much week in, week out. Now, for my defender, I'm going with Jack Elliott, and I've kind of got an interesting situation going on because these two actually play each other, right? Philadelphia and Minnesota play each other in week 1, which leaves me with a bit of a conundrum because I also have one of the highest defensive scorers in all of MLS in Kai Wagner, right? Who also plays for the Philadelphia Union. Now, my conundrum is if I play Kai Wagner in my America lineup, I'm essentially saying that I don't trust Tyler Miller to get a clean sheet. Because if Wagner, as a fullback, does really well, if he gets a decisive, if he gets a really high score, that probably means that Tyler Miller didn't get a clean sheet or didn't score very well against the Union. So the way I'm going to play this is I'm going to put Wagner in my All-Star lineup, and then in my America lineup, I'm just going to play Jack Elliott, who's a center back. So that way, potentially, if there's a 0-0, they can both benefit. If it's just a low-scoring game, then they can both potentially benefit. So that way, I kind of hedge my bets, if you will, by putting Wagner in a completely separate lineup as Jack Elliott and Tyler Miller, since those two teams play each other. Going for my midfield, I'm going with 2 midfielders in the first game week. I'm going with Mauricio Pereira. They're playing the Montreal team, Montreal FC. Now, I'm a little skeptical about Orlando's lineup in terms of their offense because they have an entirely new offense, right? Entirely new wingers, entirely new center forward. And so I'm a little concerned about how they're going to do in the early days before that lineup really has a chance to mesh in the gel. There's also a chance that Erkan Kara is not starting in the first week because of him, still needing to train, maybe recovering from a knock. So because of that, I know it's taking a bit of a gamble as a starter, but he's a really talented player. He can fashion decisive chances for himself. decisive chances for people around him. And so, even though there are a lot of questions about how their offense is going to do, especially early in the season, when everyone's still trying to figure out how to work together, I think he is some of my best opportunity for a decisive in that midfield. The second midfielder that I'm going for is Leggett. Leggett, as you guys know, if you've seen any of my channel stuff previously, I'm super high on him this year. Surrounded by a ton of talent on a new team, really on the best offensive team in the league. And so I think putting him with Buxa, who's the center forward for the Revs, right, for New England, I think having that offensive correlation might give me a really good chance at winning a pretty solid reward at some point this season. Maybe multiple rewards at some point this season. Because if I can get legit, with the decisive pass to Buxa, or vice versa, then that gives me just a really good shot at winning a pretty good reward by both of them getting decisives, and maybe like a potential blowout by the Revs. Portland is actually a pretty interesting matchup in my opinion because, well, to be perfectly blunt, Portland's defense early on in the season is going to suck. They have a brand new goalkeeper, a pretty untested goalkeeper, in Ivacic. So I think they might have some pretty easy pickings on Ivacic. And also, their starting center backs are both out. They're both injured. I know one of them is out for at least about a month or so, maybe a little over a month. Another one is recovering from, I think, a slightly shorter term injury. So you're not having their starting center backs in the first game of the season when there's a little less chemistry going on between a new goalkeeper and the defensive line. So personally, I think this is going to be a really solid week for a New England offense. If we actually look at the betting lines for these games, you can see that if we go down to Revs, they actually kind of consider them underdogs. Based on the injuries and the new goalkeeper for Portland, I'm not sure I agree with that. I actually think it should kind of be the opposite way around. I know home field advantage means a lot in MLS. I know they're traveling a long distance to get to Portland. They have to travel, pretty much coast to coast, and that gives the Revs a pretty big disadvantage. But in terms of both talent and the injuries that Portland has to their backline to start the season, I think this is a potential chance for both Leggett and Buxa and really that whole offensive line for the Revs to feast in week one. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for my America lineup. In AllStar, I'm just going to go with, again, kind of the leftovers, kind of the reserves. I've got Dahome, who's playing away to the Columbus Crew. Columbus is a really hard place to play. I'm very high on Dahome. He's one of the best all-around scorers of any forward in the MLS. He can pretty much get you consistently like high 40s, low 50s without a decisive. So just using him as a really good ETH grinder is how I'm going to try to play him this season. If the Whitecaps have a good matchup, then maybe I'll start him over Buxa once in a while, or maybe I'll have him paired with Buxa as like a double forward lineup in America. But for now, because they're away to Columbus, he's going to be my ETH grinding team for this week. Jose Martinez, another Philly Union guy. I'm really high on the Union players. He is one of the best all-around scorers as far as defensive midfielders go. Because he's defensive midfielder, you can't expect him to really get decisives almost ever, apart from maybe like a couple, assists here and there across the season. But he is one of the leading candidates for a triple-triple pretty much every week. If you look at stats from last season, he was in the top 20 of all players, okay, not just midfielders, but all players in the league as far as interceptions and tackles go. And you pretty much need both of those things to get a triple-triple, right? Because remember, triple-triple is tackles, interceptions, and a net duels won. So if you have a guy who's in the top 20 of tackles, interceptions across everyone in the season, you're looking at a guy who's pretty much a weekly candidate for a triple-triple. So in this lineup, I think he's going to give me a really solid chance. Maybe getting a reward once in a while, an all-star, and definitely helping me grind out that ETH threshold every week. And then lastly, as I said, Kai Vonner's going to slot in here, not because he's worse than anyone in this America lineup, but just because it doesn't gel with who's playing who on my America's team, right? As I said, if Wagner does really well, it's probably because Tyler Miller didn't do so well. So I'm just kind of hedge my bets by putting him in my all-star lineup instead. So that's kind of what I have going on for this first game week. If you think I made a mistake, if you think this is maybe not the optimal lineup, if you think I should switch something around, please leave a comment. Please let me know your thoughts. I'm happy to hear them and take your ideas into consideration. But that's how I'm playing game week 1, and I will see you guys next time, where we'll look at the results of our first game week in this new MLS season.